Welcome to Chain Reactions, a weekly live stream and podcast from Myosin.xyz, the leading global marketing network. I'm your host, Blake, joined by my co-host, Belina, and join us as each week we explore the chain reactions happening across crypto by interviewing the leaders behind the industry's most impactful companies. We go live on X every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern and release a podcast the following week. Let's get started. Loop here. All right. Welcome everyone. And a happy new year. We're back. We're so back. The market's starting to come together. Seems like regulation may be coming, at least for the Americans. It's a bullish time. But anyways, this is Chain Reactions. This is our weekly live stream brought to you by Myosin.xyz, where we talk to leaders, co-founders, and overall, awesome people from around crypto, Web3, to talk about the future of the on-chain economy. And so really excited to have Pontus here, who, he's a Myosin member, but also he's been doing a lot of really cool stuff within the crypto world. I'll let him talk about his background shortly, but really excited because I think today we're going to talk a lot about AI agents, x402, the implications that has for founders and especially marketers within the space. So with all that being said, I'll shut up now, but welcome, Pontus. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. This feels long overdue. It's great
Long
to see
overdue.
both those beautiful faces.
It's good. It's good.
And I think now is the perfect timing because x402 is all over my timeline, basis all over my timeline, and I think all want to know what the hell is this? What are we doing with it? What are the opportunities for marketers and devs and whatnot? And but just sort of stepping back a little bit, would love to learn more about your story, how you came into Web3, and what are you doing now in this space?
For sure. So been around for a minute. Think my journey in Web3 started back in like 2016, 2017. As one does. Ended up talking with a bunch of friends about cryptography, and that led down the path of Bitcoin, and finally discovered Ethereum, and was like, oh, the idea of smart contracts is like way more exciting to me than digital gold was at the time. And then, being the university student I was, got a bunch of made a bunch of friends, started like a student organization through that, and then went on and kind of lived my life for a couple of years. COVID happened, threw all of us terminally online, and I ended up, just by proxy of all the like gaming communities that I was a part of, living in Discord for the better part of like 3 years. And thankful for that, I ended up on Twitter, and also back in crypto in many ways. Discovered Solana, started kind of trading NFTs, and more importantly, I think trying to started becoming more and more active in a bunch of the communities. Shout out Monkey DAO, the like OG community of Solana for builders and founders. That led me to being more involved, showing up at conferences. That's where Blake and I met, at Breakpoint Lisbon. Ended up joining a team called Holoplex that was building, originally like the original NFT marketplaces on Solana. We did about $30 million dollars in volume, helped over 10,000 indie creators and some of the like OG Solana communities grow and start. Built that business into a more like enterprise business, developing like digital asset infrastructure is what I called it, because we had a bunch of inbound from businesses that were interested in NFTs and more overwhelmingly digital assets, tokens, etc. Trying to figure out like how to make this a part of their network and their products. when FTX and everything blissfully crashed, we kind of spun the wheels and tried to figure out how we could make the business work. And eventually had to shut the doors for that in October. But that ended up leaving me with the opportunity to spend a lot of time, kind of spinning up some conversations and chatting with Blake at Myosin and kind of contributing there, but also spent a lot of time with the ecosystem teams at Bonk, which is everyone's favorite meme coin on Solana and 12 other chains, believe it or not.
We
and
love
while I was
Bonk.
there,
Wait, I didn't know 12 other chains. Damn, that's crazy.
yeah, Wormhole is good tech. Yeah, and did that for the better part of a year and a half, 2 years. We'll call it two. Two sounds better. And now have kind of gotten red pilled on agents and bring a little bit sprinkle of crypto into it, which is the x402 piece. Joined some old friends, and now we're building Corbits and this open source project called FairMeter. And trying to really kind of build the future of agentic commerce in a really cool way.
From meme coins and like super community retail to Corbits. It's an interesting move.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about like what Corbits does and the framework that you guys have developed, like in a minute or less?
Yeah. So fundamentally, we've built this open source software library called FairMeter that is a system of libraries and packages that are designed to make it very easy for agents to discover things and pay for them, or use them, if you will. And Corbits is kind of our commercial arm that is trying to build real valuable products for businesses on top of that open source framework. You can kind of think of it as WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. WordPress.org is this kind of open source framework for building websites. It powers 40% of all the websites that we know and love on the internet. And then WordPress.com is this commercial entity that provides hosting services, templates, etc., that millions of businesses are built on top of. And what's cool about building open source frameworks and open source software is that it's not just WordPress.com that gets built, it's not just Corbits that gets built, but it's also potentially hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of other businesses that also get developed, whether that's marketing agencies helping WordPress-enabled businesses go out and deliver to their end customers, or new feature sets, new plugins that get built that have their own value.
Makes sense. And I think Corbits has been around for quite a bit now, well before the whole x402 build, like way before it kind of took over the narrative recently. So for those who don't know, what is x402, and what role does it play in this agentic finance world?
Yeah, totally. So x402 is merely a specification of how crypto payments can work over the internet. And so if you step back in time actually to the late 80s, whenever they were kind of laying the original foundation. I think we've all kind of heard about HTTP 404, which is when you go to a website and it doesn't show anything. H402 was a status code that was reserved for payments. And so the idea was that there would be internet native payment mechanisms, and websites and services would be set up to accept those. And they would do so by taking advantage of this status code. So when you go to a website and you request a service or request information, you would send a 402, or you would send a request. The server would send back, hey, 402, there's a payment that's required here. Please provide payment before we can provide you those services. And so x402, which Coinbase put out in May last year really is just kind of a definition of how cryptocurrencies and more like, I guess, tangibly stable coins can be used over 402 to pay for things. And so that enables a lot of really interesting use cases and behaviors online that we've been kind of knocking at the door at, I think, as tech forward industries in general, but now feel way closer and way more timely than they ever have, especially given the rise of agents in general.
And you mentioned, Coinbase and Base, but you also mentioned that you've been deep down the Solana ecosystem world. So is Corbits more focused on Solana then, or is it Base focused?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Frankly, like FairMeter, which is the framework, doesn't care, and x402 also doesn't care, right? The reason why, like, the history lesson here is like Coinbase built the original x402 reference implementation using Base and USDC as an example of how these payments can work. But the reality is like the specification for x402 can work with any token and any network. We obviously have a lot of experience with our kind of development history and our network on Solana. And so the Coinbase team originally reached out to us in April of last year, asking us if we could kind of contribute to X402 and add support for Solana as another kind of example of how these payments could work. And that ask we took on happily. We love kind of contributing to open source projects, of which X402 is one, and also framing it within the context of Solana. And so we built FairMeter as a way, or in order to do that, because we felt that there was kind of a need for a fresh framework for doing X402 payments. The implementation that Coinbase put out, we felt was a little limited at the time, and it's evolved a lot since then. But because of that, it kind of, I think, appears that we've picked Solana as like our chariot. And like, yes, maybe that's intentional because it's where our network is, it's what we're familiar with, and it's what, and certainly like how we think about problems in crypto first. But Corbits ultimately tries to be agnostic as a commercial entity about what chains it is that we work with, and what tokens it is that we work with. FairMeter as a open source framework certainly is. There's like nothing hard coded about like what token to use or what network to use in that set of libraries. And as far as like Corbits is concerned, we work with plenty of other networks. We're really close with the Base Foundation. We're close with Polygon. We're close with Monad. And we've kind of the very first PR to FairMeter that was done outside of like the ABK Labs team or the Corbits team was by the Scale Network engineer team.
Scale.
Yeah. So that like maybe is a very roundabout way of, or like a political way of answering that question. We love Solana. We intend to keep building on it. But much like X402, we think that there will be many competing standards. There will be many competing networks, and there will be many competing tokens that agents use to get things done.
So with that in mind, I'd love to chime in here. Like, I think, I don't know, I guess it depends on like who's listening, right? Like, I think generally our audience is pretty crypto native, but I will say like I've been a lot of people who listen who don't know much about it at all, right? But would love to have you kind of walk us through like the simplest X402 flow end to end. And then I think what I'm most curious about right now is like adoption, I guess, because I think personally, like, I think a lot of people, at least like for people like us in our industry who go to conferences and you talk to people who work in crypto, and a lot of people have been talking about agents for a long time, it doesn't feel like we're quite there yet. Personally, at least. Like, I think people are starting to get there and all these things, but I've been looking around and I have yet to find someone who's like, oh, I'll give you my money, or I'll give this agent my money, and they're gonna just deploy these funds and make me more money. Like, there are a couple, but none that have like really. And by the way, as far as I understand, that's not even the main use case necessarily. So we'd love to kind of hear from your perspective. Like, number one, like a basic user flow of like what's the most common use case you'd see, and like how you think adoption has been going really lately.
Yeah. So let's get the straightforward question out of the way, which is like, what does the user flow look like? It's frankly everything that, like, if you've been using crypto before, what you're used to, you go to a website, there's some kind of pop-up that says, hey, you need to pay using traditionally like stable coins to access this site or this service. You click accept, the money goes out of your wallet, you pay for the service, and you're off to the races. So x402, like, again, if we go back to like the specification itself, is the user makes a request for some service, some information, gets a response from the service provider. In this case, we call them merchants, saying, hey, you owe us money. You make that payment, and the merchant gives you whatever it is that you're requesting. Is that simple enough? Or
yeah, I think it gets to the point. I think what's really interesting too, right, is like we're seeing. Sorry, I'm just kind of like, I love to just like react and go a little bit, off scripts maybe, but like, as we know, right, like payments is, I think, one of the most obvious use cases for crypto, right? Like Stripe and Tempo and USDT. And you mentioned Polygon earlier, right? Like Polygon just announced they're now a payment. I forget the exact terminology, but they're a, what is it?
Bank.
Yeah.
I'm smooth brained. I saw bank or maybe didn't even see bank and just assumed bank. I need to read the article more.
We bank. We're
yeah, exactly.
So they're like a payment process or whatever. So like curious.
Yeah.
I guess really the question then becomes like, have you seen a lot of adoption there? Like, and what are the blockers maybe? Because I guess I'm getting back to like, who's using this? How early is it? How can people take advantage of it? What should people be thinking about when it comes to x402 and Corbits, and whether it's the open source stuff, the public goods kind of, I guess, or the private side of things,
Totally. There are a couple of things there I think we can chat about. Let's get like the numbers out of the way. And then we can talk about like selling the vision, right? Which is what everyone does in the VC land and like crypto land. So if you look at the numbers and the people that have like probably put out the best reports on x402 over the last, I would really say like 4 months, whenever like it popped off because of a bunch of like meme coins back in like October, I think it was like September, October. There are 2 reports I would encourage people to look at. One is the team over at Artemis. They've put out a lot of really great like numbers and dashboards around what's being used for x402. Tangentially, like x402 scan is like another great resource for finding x402 resources and finding all these numbers, but Artemis, I think, compiles it the best way. And then the second team that I want to shout out is Decentralized, with the British spelling. They did a really good like ecosystem report of like what some of the use cases are, what some of the big teams are, et cetera, pretty early on. So definitely like check those 2 things out. But if you're not down to read, I'll kind of like get to it, and that is that the numbers say that around 48%, roughly like half of all the x402 transactions, are basically like wash trading and gamification for leaderboards and like vanity metrics. And so whether that's like 5 million transactions a day or $5 million in volume, or I think like $2 million in volume and like 300,000 transactions a day, which is, I think, what it's been like over the last week, that's probably like a fairly like accurate read. And so my takeaway, and I think anyone's takeaway from that, should be like x402 is incredibly early. If you're hearing about it now, like, you're in first. But for businesses and for like marketers, which is, I think is like something we want to get to talking about. There's a lot left to kind of be discovered if this is even something that's like going to stick. And for that reason, it's important to have like the history lesson of HTTP 402 in mind, because people have been trying to make crypto transactions over this protocol happen for decades. Like back in 2009, there was a attempt by, I think it's called L402, to get Lightning Network transactions working over HTTP 402. And that never really took off. And I think like we talk a lot um, like as founders and in like the startup world about like timing is like, it's one thing to have the idea, but like timing has to be right. And I think if you like go back and like try and reflect on where things were like in tech in the like 2010s, AI and like agents weren't there, and like crypto adoption wasn't there either. The difference now is like crypto, like the infrastructure for crypto has changed very dramatically. It is now possible to build million, if not billion-dollar companies almost like seemingly overnight, because fundamentally the rails exist. And two, we're also like at this moment where people are starting to use agents much more voraciously for just about everything, whether you're a developer or whether you're someone in BD or marketing. And so fundamentally, like what we're seeing is, or what we're trying to like figure out, I think, not just like within X402, but just like as a tech industry, is like what role do agents play? And in order for agents to play different roles, they need to have access to different tools. They need to have, and when I say access to tools, tools aren't free, right? Like you guys pay for Canva, you pay for Riverside, you pay for like Adobe Premiere. Those all cost money. And that's because those things are valuable and provide some kind of like ability for you to create economic output for the organizations that you're a part of. Similarly, like the tools that agents use aren't free. I mean, if you ask ChatGPT a question now, it consumes tokens. Well, if you have a subscription, you know that those tokens cost money, right? And so it stands to reason that the tools that agents will like end up using will also cost money. And if we like bring that back to X402, like one of the things you kind of often see paraded around is like this idea of microtransactions. And this is like one of the saving graces of crypto is like you can make microtransactions happen. And so this idea of like sub-cent, cent costed access to different things now is possible, which then makes them compelling for agents to consume at a moment's notice. So we've talked like a little bit about what the like actual use is, what maybe like the vision is, and also touched, I think, on like what's really interesting about this isn't necessarily the like human use case that I explained before of like going to a website, getting a prompt from your wallet to pay for something and accessing a New York Times like article that would traditionally be behind like a subscription, but rather an agent maybe going and requesting those things and being able to pay for them.
Something I'm thinking about right now, or sorry, and then Polina, I'll throw it over to you, is I feel like at least over the holidays, like everything's popping off about like everyone's freaking out about like Claude Code, right? Yep. And so I'm just thinking, and like now Claude Code does co-work. So it's not only coding, it's just like your life, right? And I'm sure that'll only become more prevalent. You know, ironically, they use Claude Code to code Claude Code co-work, which is like the fucking, you know, it's confusing. You know, like the levels, it gets a lot. But I guess my point here is like, I'm curious, like, do you think, like, I guess how do the big players like Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, how do you think they'll eventually integrate, or potentially, like, what's the best case, right? Like, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but like, how do you think, getting a bit speculative, I guess, but like thought experiment of like, how do you think they would participate? Because I guess it's like, if you create valuable tools that leverage X402, you know, your Claude Code would say, oh, I want to use this whatever the thing is, but would they have to use x402, or how would that work? I'm just thinking out loud. Yeah.
It's a great question. And I think maybe to like the detriment of all the like x402 stands, I might it might sound like I'm throwing them under the bus, but like the thing to remember is that x402 is just like a payment specification, like it's just a standard for how these payments happen. And if there's anything that like we've learned from the dawn of the internet is that standards will always there will always be competing standards, right? My favorite XKCD of all time is the one of not Johnny Drop Tables, but the 13 competing standards. It's like why are we using all these standards? Like let's go make another one. And it's like now there are 14 competing standards.
Let's make a standard for the standards. Yeah.
Exactly. And so like if you're currently building in X4 with X402, I think it'd be very valuable for you as a business or you as a project to take a step back and ask yourself how many of my eggs are in this basket for X402. Like if X402 doesn't take off for whatever reason, like am I still going to be able to have a business built around this? And this is like one of the things that we like asked ourselves when we started going down the rabbit hole of X402. And one of the like intentional decisions we made with FairMeter. FairMeter isn't just a framework for X402, it's a framework for agentic commerce. And what that means is that like if you decide that you don't want to use X402's definition of how a like payment should work between agents, you can just pick another one, right?
So you guys aren't, just to answer your own question, you guys aren't putting all your eggs in that one basket. Like X402 is certainly like, a buzzword, and it's a potential standard. But what I'm hearing is with FairMeter and maybe Corbits, you guys are diversifying your bets, which is smart. I think it's a very good move, potentially. Yeah.
I mean, Corbits, like the products we build with Corbits are all built on top of FairMeter. And like maybe it's inappropriate for like us to use them interchangeably, but like we try
like Foundation Labs, maybe? Is that a good parallel or separate, different?
Yeah, right. I talked earlier about like WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. Like the crypto equivalent is like Labs versus Foundation, right? Solana Foundation has this mission to like continue like the work on the Solana blockchain, decentralizing it, helping teams, etc., build with Solana. Similarly, like we want to help teams for sure build and contribute to FairMeter in their own ways. And then Solana Labs is a somewhat like commercial entity that builds products to monetize and to like build real businesses and like other foundations and other products on top of Solana, right? Similarly, like we have Corbits. And so like going back to the question, it's like FairMeter, like what's interesting for us is agentic commerce. And I think right now, like the lens that X402 has provided us to look at agentic commerce is certainly like one of the like more interesting ones in our book, and also one of the ones that's like closest to home. We are a crypto native team. We have been building building and contributing and like working with some of the biggest teams in crypto for the last like 10 years. But we've also seen like open source software be built over the last 3 decades. I mean, we have like one of our co-founders has software on Mars. We've seen standards wars happen on everything from like cellular to like the internet to like anything else you can think of. And so for us, like the approach was we think agentic commerce is coming and is the future. We think X402 is a lens of, or is a way that payments could potentially work in this scenario. But ultimately, like a winning framework or a winning like SDK will be able to interchange that payment that payment protocol with anything, right? And similarly, like be able to interchange any agent, be able to interchange any resource, etc. And so that's like fundamentally like the approach that we've taken. I think like, and I'll like maybe provide a little bit more context on why we think x402 is like interesting before I kind of like give the floor back, because I know I've been talking for a minute. But we think that within the scope of agent like an agentic future, crypto has three really like important things to offer. One is this idea of microtransactions, because the reality is like the world doesn't feel like it can operate on $5 minimums that like Stripe requires you as a business to operate on. Two, it's illegal for an agent to have access to your bank account by default, which means that they can't have credit cards, they can't have checking, they can't have savings accounts. And that's just a proxy of like the financial and like the traditional financial and like legal systems just don't know what an agent is. They ask for social security numbers and they're like, what the fuck, right?
Just a quick note on that, not to interrupt, right? But like, as we know, like Clarity Act in the US is starting to come to fruition. As far as I understand, there's not even a single mention of agentic commerce. Like they're still trying to figure out how to regulate crypto, let alone the intersection of AI and crypto. They're not even close to that. So that'll probably take another 5 years. Who knows, right? So yeah. Great point. Back to you.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like, so if that part's a blocker, then like giving a wallet to an agent and like funding it is infinitely like easier than trying to like fix the regulatory environment as it is. So with crypto, we've now been able to like solve the minimum transaction requirement. We've been able to give agents access to a wallet so that they can pay for things. And interestingly enough, like a third piece that's like also exciting is that the idea of like instant finality and instant settlement solves a lot of pain points for the traditional like financial system as it relates to agents, because the idea of like refunds, chargebacks, credits becomes very, very challenging when you're giving up compute resources for jobs. And people can like imagine you spent $10,000 of like credits running Claude code, and then someone is like, nah, I'm submitting this as fraud on my Amex, and now you as a business are out $10,000, right? Like there's no recourse for that. Whereas like with crypto, because like you do have this concept of like near instant finality on these like high performance blockchains like Base and Solana, that problem somewhat goes away rather quickly. And then like the interesting part and like what we're excited about with like FairMeter is like when you build really interesting and compelling frameworks, you now make it possible for those businesses around credit, around chargebacks, around refunds to exist as like plugins to that network or to that framework that then agents and businesses can take advantage of. And we've seen that story play out time and time again in like WordPress. Like think about how many like templates and how many like shopping like cart widgets there are that make millions of dollars a year just by providing that one service and providing it better than anyone else.
Yeah, I want to dig a bit deeper into, you mentioned that x402 is very early, right? And you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket and everything. As Corbits is focused, on x402, I wonder, how do you approach like marketing GTM? Like assuming your target audience are developers, right? That would use the framework, that would use Corbits. What is your approach in for user acquisition here, and what has been your experience so far? Because I saw that you guys did some participated in Colosseum hackathon on Solana, right, and a few things. So I don't know, I'm not sure if you did anything on Base, but curious to hear like what your experience has been so far, because I think developer marketing, developer acquisition is a big part of what we're doing in crypto and Web3, and would love to get to know a bit more about how you approached it.
Yeah, it's a great question. And shout out to the team at Coliseum for putting on yet another great hackathon, and really looking forward to the three new hackathons that they have coming this year. I saw them put out a post about that. So if you're a developer building in the Solana space or crypto in general, you should definitely check them out. Yeah. So to your point, developer interest is like very top of mind for us. There are a couple of like different strategies we have there. One is like build the or build software that's almost unavoidable, right? Like if we build FairMeter as this open source framework that is just leagues above everything else that's on the market, then developers will inherently end up using it because it enables them to build better solutions. And we think that or we know that the FairMeter client is like the best tool for agent builders to use, period, especially if you're like interested in x402. The challenge for us here is, and what we have is like very top of mind for this year, is from like the FairMeter side to build more libraries and build more packages that are like compelling for developers to use. A really great example of this is if you've been following the troubles that like Tailwind has been dealing with lately, is that they built this really great open source software package that now agents are using. And so everyone's sitting here vibe coding over the holidays. They've got 750 million downloads of their software. And like that's the distribution and that's like now the standard for how people building websites are using it. We want FairMeter to be the same kind of tool that developers reach for when they want to build something with their agents. And so who we're targeting in particular are those agent builders. Whether it's someone building like agent swarms on chain, or someone building SocialFi, or someone just trying to like integrate some LLM via like a chatbot interface or otherwise into their application. Fundamentally, that's the target audience, and the pitch is like FairMeter and Corbits allow your LLMs to discover better than any other option on the market, and also make it infinitely easier to take action on whatever it is that you end up discovering. And so for Corbits, what we're focusing on really is kind of building so we announced a product in December, and I'm happy to like also share today for the first time on this podcast and just on the internet that we're starting to onboard folks to the beta for our API deployment tool. So what this means is like any merchant, for one, that has a unique resource that agents might want to consume or use, can now in like a minute or less deploy that tool and have it be x402 compatible across Solana, across Base, across Monad, and across Polygon. And for us, what we kind of see this enabling is increasing the supply of x402 resources in a really compelling way. And then what we hope to build over the next like months is rather quickly the packages that can increase the demand side, which are the agents that are consuming these resources. So like go-to-market strategy for us is very much like build the simplest tools to reduce friction as much as possible for both merchants and for agent builders.
I think so. To sort of step into that, this sounds to me like, building resources and building great tools is amazing, and it's the baseline. But we're at square one with builders having amazing product, but no one to use them because they don't have the attention, right? So you need kind of both. So obviously you seem to have the product thing figured out and mapped out, and I'm curious to know, like, what is your approach to getting that attention, to actually getting the devs to see that this is like a no-brainer solution?
Yeah. So I think that there are two approaches we have top of mind. One is like go out and build these products and these businesses ourselves. And that's like what Corbits is, right? Like here's all these like here's this amazing open source framework. You can just go out and build things. And like, by the way, that's what we did at Corbits. Like all the products, the API deployment tool and what comes next are like all built on top of FairMeter. So like dog food for sure. And then on the second piece, it's like, okay, how do we get users of those products? And I think here's where things get really spacey and really interesting is like, it's not just developers that we're like targeting as users, right? Like we want developers who are building agents and building software to use our tooling, but we're also like trying to market to agents as well. And so like where it gets spacey there is like discovery becomes a very challenging question. And I have like a number of friends who are in AI, are like managers at very successful like SaaS businesses across a wide variety of industries who are now thinking about or starting to like genuinely ask themselves like what role do agents as customers play in our business. And I think that's what we've spent the last like 6 months really trying to like hone in on. And discovery is like building the best discovery tools in the market that enable agents to discover the best resources and use them easily is like the answer to that. And to like maybe provide more color on that too is like you need to build like more agents have to come online, and we've seen like the appetite from devs to want to build more agents, but like we
So,
envision that the future is 50 billion agents by the end of like this year.
and I don't think, well, 50 billion, I mean, I love it. It's ambitious, but I guess, and Pontus, obviously you're familiar with what we're building at Myosin, right? But just thinking selfishly out loud, right? If you ever go to for anyone who's listening, right? Like I think Myosin, we've been doing a lot of things, but as a global marketing network, whatever, we've been building out an AI product called HiveMind. It is basically like a crypto marketing agent in many forms, right? That's trained on the expertise of our members like Pontus and Polina here and many others. But I guess like to bring it to life, Pontus, like how is that marketplace there yet? How does it work? Because I think for us, like what I think about with HiveMind is obviously the more access it has to more data sources, the access it has to more tooling that it can deploy. Like the way I'm conceiving of it, at least from our side, is HiveMind will become kind of like the Myosin powered AI, ChatGPT that's way smarter because it's trained on actual use cases and playbooks. But to execute on those playbooks and case studies, it has to have access to various tools and marketplaces and whatever else it is. So curious to hear how you guys are thinking about that, whether it's FairMeter, Corbits, whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where the energy we have for Corbits is kind of all focused around. So the tool that we've kind of announced, the one-click deploy, makes it so that the tools that agents and like applications like HiveMind have access to become nearly frictionless to deploy. So now, like, whether you're a team with like real or with like a like a real API service, take Nansen as like an example, whose APIs we've been proxying for the past 6 months with their team. They provide on-chain information about hundreds of thousands of wallets, tokens, etc. It becomes very easy for them to plug in and deploy that, which by nature grows the available tool set for agents like HiveMind. But what's really interesting and what we're hoping like hits like virality and like network effects is that this tool also allows someone who's not technical to deploy their services. So like a really great example about this is like if you are able to like build a prompt or like a service that is hyper specialized and provides very unique capabilities, whether that's like hive mind creating marketing, or whether that's like someone like Kabuto King, right? We've seen this guy on Twitter, him like creating a very like specialized like resource for the internet to consume everything about Kabutos, right?
For
Like
anyone
that's
who's
a
not aware, this guy has just been, and Pontus, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming we're talking about the guy who's been buying up the entire market on Pokemon cards for Kabuto, which is
100%.
like a fossil Pokemon. Amazing, legendary, because he's just like jacking up the price. Yeah,
Yeah.
like very specialized.
Yeah.
And his works,
But
by
like
the way, on his side. Good for him.
100%. But like someone who seemingly has like no technical expertise to offer, but has domain experience to offer, can now use our tool to make that of like their knowledge and their tool available to agents and charge for it. And so like now what ends up happening, like the way that we see it, is that when an agent like HiveMind that is specialized in like delivering like market insights, personas, campaign planning, etc., to crypto native businesses, needs to pull in and use more context or like additional tools because the end user wants those things, or the agent wants those things to like add context and add more value. It can go out and pay for those and do that, right? And that like future is like what we're working towards, right? Is like the discovery mechanism. And our first step at like solving that problem was very like targeted at making the process of deploying a resource as simple as possible. Our next trick will be making those resources, because there'll be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them, as easy to discover as possible, whether that's through MCP, like specialized MCP, or agent to agent interactions, right? So you could imagine like there being a Corbits MCP service that is targeted at crypto marketing or like forget Corbits, Myosin could in theory build an MCP service that is hyper focused on this and then serve that using Corbits. So now anyone that wants access to this marketing MCP service can now spend real money to access it in real time, right? Like things get very spacey very quickly because it's not just humans providing services or just businesses providing services, but it's also agents providing services and resources.
And we should double click on that, right? Because I think that, for myself, and I think Polina and all of us and anyone who's listening, right? Like there's that's the massive implication. And I think people don't, personally, I don't think people grasp the gravity of that, which is as we move towards this agentic future. Because let's be honest, right? AI is not getting worse. It's only getting better and better, and it's only getting smarter and smarter. And there is a future where, the hypothesis that we have, at least for HiveMind and whatever else, right? Like in AI in general, is like Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, Manus, whatever the LLM is, right? Like in a AI powered world, public data is infinitely, the value of data goes to zero. Private data is more valuable, right? Because that's stuff you can actually monetize and hold for yourself. And then these are all things that need to tie together. I don't know. And this is where agentic commerce, like we all need to productize ourselves in a form, right? Because
but
that's our moat,
Yeah.
And creating agentic commerce to trade between these things is where it all comes together in some form. Yeah.
The other interesting thing, if we take like the piece about data one step further, because we're already seeing public data become like more and more private, right? Like Cloudflare, there's a reason why Cloudflare has been experimenting with paper crawl and as part of the X402 Foundation, is because businesses are like, why the hell are agents scraping our websites using our data without us getting anything out of it, right? Like they're trying to solve this. So I think your observation about data becoming more and more private is accurate. I think the other thing, like the next step to that is that what's really exciting and like where agents and humans can still play a part is that expertise becomes even more valuable, right? If you have if the access to data is universal and everyone has access to it, what really becomes exciting is like why is it that your experience with that data is different from someone else and valuable, right? Like why is it that a researcher who spent 20 years looking at like all the pricing models in the world for Bitcoin, why do I value his experience and like of this public data more so than anyone else? And like that, I actually had this conversation last night at dinner, is like that applies to any industry. And I think like the reason why we're talking about X402 is more so a reflection of like tech's, like the world's obsession about agents, because they're worried that agents are going to like ruin their ability to market themselves. And I think the opposite probably is going to happen, where it becomes more valuable. Like your ability to market yourself to agents becomes just as valuable, if not more valuable, than being able to market to humans. And that's what's like cool about the position that like Myosin is putting itself in with like HiveMind, and just as like a marketing guild, is like the access to like expertise, whether it's in the form of HiveMind as an agent or as an organization, and like the contributors that like exist within Myosin become more and more valuable. And like maybe they surface themselves as like X402 endpoints, who knows? But there's still like value to be had there and value to be distributed to humans and agents alike.
All coming. Brilliant summary. I do have to be conscious of time, unfortunately. We are coming up at the end of the hour here. But I guess before we move on to rapid fire questions, I guess I would just kind of give you the space and say, what are the things you're most excited about for 2026 with agentic commerce, with FairMeter, with Corbits? Like what's coming up? What's exciting for you? And is there anything people should be expecting or keeping an eye out for maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. So the obvious one is the one-click deploy tool that we've talked about. I'm personally excited because I think once people recognize that they can plug their own like ChatGPT, their own Claude keys into that tool and add their own like secret sauce, and then go out and market that resource to agents, this thing becomes like goes parabolic. And like that's like our litmus test for, is this a good product? Is, can anyone take their like Claude keys, add their magic to it, and then serve that as a resource overall? We're also really excited to start exploring new payment mechanisms or new payment schemas for agents. We've currently been working in the world of like exact payments. So this idea that like an agent requests a resource, that resource costs 10 cents, you pay 10 cents, you get access to it. But if there's anything we know, like that's not how the world works. There are subscriptions, there are like credit models, etc. We're actively working and like should have it out probably by like the end of this month, a new scheme that enables subscriptions and like all the traditional like payment mechanisms. So that'll be a fun way to like play around with things. We're working on discovery, so within the lens of like MCP and agents as well. We're also excited to be like partnering with more and more teams in the agent space, within the SaaS tooling space, and within AI in general, over the coming months. And I think like ultimately, like if I just like go to 30,000 feet, think people are going to have more and more agents, not less. Think we're going to have more agents doing things constantly for us. And this, I think a lot of people on Twitter have talked about this idea of like everyone's becoming orchestrators. I think that's like a very nice like mental image. And I think that's very like real. And what I hope happens is that as people are orchestrating, they're buying themselves more time to sit down and think more like esoterically about the problems that either their businesses their customers or like society is facing. And maybe we have like more interesting solutions for that. But as like one of my friends said, like the space isn't slowing down. We're accelerating. Um, we're super excited doing that with open source software, and trying to build with as many people as possible.
Accelerate, baby. And dude, send some of that documentation to our dev team. I mean, I would love to see how we can integrate some of that in the coming months, because we are about to turn on subscriptions for HiveMind in the coming next 1 or 2 months. So stay tuned.
Yep.
Okay, we should jump to rapid fire questions. We are over. I got to run another thing in a sec, but this is important. So we have 4 questions as per usual. Pauline, you want to kick it off? We'll go back and forth and round it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first one is the most underrated marketing tactic in Web3 right now.
Charge real dollars. I think everyone's everyone's obsessed with trying to like pay for like get charged for payment in their like native or whatever their token is. Like forget that. USDC, Tether, like whatever it is, like the dollar wins. That's the beauty of crypto.
I think
People want dollars. Some stability. You're right. That's the first time we've ever heard that. I like it. Most overrated marketing tactic in crypto Web3 right now.
Tokens. They're very fun, don't get me wrong. But I think like
I love this.
I always tell teams not to launch tokens, and it's because I think that they see it as an opportunity to like get people involved, etc. But like ultimately what it ends up doing is like you're launching another product. You will spend the next 6 months just working on token stuff. Yeah. It's just like not worth it. C.1, just use USDC, use tokens, or use stable coins.
Fair point. I love it.
Pontus is like, give me money, no tokens.
Just give me USDC with Agentic commerce.
Yeah. And like on that point, I think I saw a chart like literally yesterday. There are like over 30 stable coins on Solana right now that are all fighting for market dominance. The state of Wyoming has its own stable coin. I am sure if you were to take your product and be like, we are only accepting Wyoming stablecoins, the state of Wyoming will probably reach out to you, or someone in some marketing agency there will be like, how do we support you? I don't know, give it a shot. And if that doesn't work, pivot to the next stablecoin. At the end of the day, they're all just SPL tokens. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, that was number 2. What's number 3?
That's you, Paulina.
Which crypto brand or project is crushing it right now?
I think Solana.
And it can't be your own thing. Okay, Solana. I mean, they just posted a crazy tweet.
Yeah. Solana's doing great. Bonk's doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for the journey that the dog takes over the next 6 to 12 months.
Just bonk it. Yeah. Okay. And then last one. This is one of our favorite ones. We've asked every guest this question in the entirety of this podcast in all of its shapes and colors and forms. But looking back at the past year or so, what's your biggest learnings as a crypto marketer, GTM, whatever you want to call yourself? Professional learning. It's always a good one. Reflective.
Yeah, great question. Excuse me. I have it as a New Year's resolution this year to leave group chats behind.
Ooh. Wait, like less group chats or no group chats, or what does that mean? Yeah.
Less group chats.
Yeah.
I found that over the last 5 years in crypto, I've amassed a lot of them. And I've kept them purposely because I love when someone DMs me on Telegram, I look at all the mutual groups and I use that as a litmus test for how experienced you are and like if you're real. And I find that like I just have started creating a lot of noise, and it's really great to be part of communities, but there are very few I find that consistently like provide really great answers or really great insight every time I touch them. And I'm trying to spend more time in those groups like Myosin, like Monkey DAO, as opposed to like letting group chats kind of like dominate and like add more noise.
I like that. Less group chats, be more intentional. And by the way, Pontus, I always have to say thank you for being a part of Myosin. Thanks for being part of this. And I'm excited to see what kind of magic we can cook up together. Corbits, HiveMind, and we love Solana, but that's how we met, Breakpoint and everything else. So bullish on Sol, bullish on everything else. bullish on you guys and everything you guys are cooking up, because I do really believe, like, as AI takes over, and well, hopefully not takes over, but as it gets more prevalent, maybe let's put it that way, agentic commerce will be the future, right? Because it's something I talk about quite a bit, actually. Like, as someone who travels a lot and who's been nomadic for a couple of years, it's crazy. Like, I have friends in all over the world, and unless I'm paying them in cash, I'm like, how do I pay you? Like, I can't. Like, you may have PayPal, or I have PayPal. You don't have PayPal. Like, I can't Venmo you because you're not American. And then I'm like, what?
Dude,
Am I gonna fucking wire you? Like, and it's gonna take 3 days for you to get my money, and I have to get your account number and your routing number and your bank details. Like, it's stupid. It's crazy.
I got hit with a 15% ATM conversion fee like literally a week ago, and I almost like threw my phone across the street. And then I realized I would have more success walking in and trying to get this like old establishment serving goulash to accept stable coins than like solving the ATM problem.
It's a problem, but hopefully it'll, we're cautiously optimistic in the next 5-10 years it'll get solved. So, but in the meantime, you guys are doing the hard work creating that open source framework, and doing the good work. So kudos to you. And excited.
We're happy to be doing it. Thanks for having us.
Beautiful. All right. I think with that, we got to wrap it up. But yeah, Pontus, one last thing. How can people find you? How can they reach you? What's the call to action? Just let the folks know, and we can wrap it from there.
Yeah. Everyone should go to api.corbits.dev and sign up for an account, and start creating resources that agents and humans alike can access. As a first start, just try plugging in your favorite chat API token or API key, and we'll take care of the rest. You can also find us at Corbits, CORBITS_dev on Twitter. My personal one is at Classic Scuba on both Twitter and Telegram. And then we'll actually be at Mountain DAO this year. So if you're in Salt Lake City building on Solana or other chains, come hang out on the mountain, and we'll be there and happy to chat everything about agents, AI, vibe coding, Claude coding, everything in between.
It's all coming. Everything in between. The agentic world is fast approaching, so prepare. And this guy's going to be a part of it. All right, folks, with that, we got to wrap it up. We are over time. But thank you so much, Pontus, for coming on. Excited for what's coming next. And we'll see everyone else online. And tune in next week. We have a really fun, some Bitcoin folks coming on next week. So we'll talk about that later. So, yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank
all right.
You.
Cheers, everyone.
Ciao.
Cheers. Ciao, ciao.